Hello, Ruchi.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I am doing great. It is busy. How about you?
Same, same. I feel like every time we talk, we're like, how busy are you these days?
It seems right. Last time we talked, we said, oh, it can't get busier, but
Yeah.
somehow it's gotten busier. Well, I hope you're going to be able to get some downtime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's a really interesting topic that we're talking about today that has a lot to do with what our standard greeting is, right? So busyness, taking
Yeah,
a break, how are we doing? I think one of the things that are top of mind for me is how do we get the time to take a break? What does it mean to like take time for yourself? I think we see it a lot in the workplace. Hey, what'd you do this weekend? Or
right.
hey, are you resting? I don't know about you, Rob, but I feel like the answer more and more is like, oh God, I don't even know.
I think it's what's rest. And then I
Yeah.
think that the corollary to that is I know we wanted to talk about the future of work, the future of humanity at work. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I was thinking about is what is work? What is
Mm-hmm.
work now and what is work going to be in the future? And then we can talk a little bit about, the humanity at work. So what do you
Yeah.
think? What do you think work is right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting question. I think like work is just kind of getting things done, right? It's the execution. It's what is your area of expertise? How are you keeping the wheels moving, the roof on the house, the lights turned on? Work is just the execution day to day. I think the other part of work that has long been under examined as a real load on people's energy levels is the cognitive burden that's increased, especially during COVID. I think more and more I'm hearing a lot of people say, like, I just don't have the time to think. I don't have the time to plan. I don't have the
Yeah.
time to strategize. I don't have the time to organize. So you either have the time to be in a meeting and discuss something like, high level, and then you have time to maybe go do and execute. But there's this step in between, I think, in work that's missing that really makes people feel ineffective, anxious, adds to the burden, which is processing what you just talked about, making decisions about what needs to be done and what can be done by other people,
Hmm.
and then executing in the most efficient and smart way rather than just doing the hard work.
So you're saying actually instead of executing, and then looking back and see what you did wrong, you're saying why not do a little planning up front before you do the executing, and it can be much more seamless and much more effective, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's easy for us to say, right? Like everyone will say, duh, of course I
Yeah,
need to plan.
right.
Duh, of course I need to like organize. I think what we're seeing is that the workplace is so fast paced that the fact that you're accessible to everyone means that you're always in meetings, you're always in discussion, you're always in kind of this pre decision phase that you never get the time to
Yeah.
really do the things that help you execute later on.
It's interesting, and that's why I love the Robin Ruchi show so much. We get to talk about things and bring into the conversation, our own work.
Mhm.
So yesterday, I sat through a really interesting module that a senior leader, one of our clients, was discussing about lean thinking, Genba,
Mm.
and some of the very mature now Asian philosophies around process improvement and work. And I have to tell you, Ruchi, I was thinking to myself, is this out of date?
Mm.
Are some of these concepts in terms of workflow optimization and thinking and planning in this new work environment, maybe the people who invented these incredible concepts never foresaw what's happening now in
Mm.
terms of work overload and the people part of it, and
Wow.
that even getting to the point of the whole self leader as something to really think about.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine Toyota was not thinking about automation the way that automation is now when they were thinking about the five whys or lean, right? But I do think, I mean, for me, it raises this interesting notion of how much have we bastardized, excuse my language, but how much
Yeah.
have we bastardized these concepts as well and tried to
Yeah.
blanketly apply them? I do think like there is, especially for manufacturing clients and industries, there's like a very strong and clear value proposition for a lot of these tools. But what I find happens because we don't have the time to plan and strategize and think through these things is we create the shorthand using
Mm,
tools, and we say like, here are the shortcuts, or here's the way to, like, I don't know, you think about something like grow, right?
right.
I am going to approach this really tough conversation with grow, and grow is not going to be a tool for facilitating a conversation that will probably unfold over multiple conversations. Instead, grow needs to solve this problem now,
Yeah.
otherwise it's not a effective framework.
Right. And guess what? We don't have the time because we have these deadlines.
Yeah, and so it becomes rote, right? Like something that is formulaic, which is formulaic on purpose because it makes it simple to apply something, has become formulaic also in execution, in that there's almost a lack of heart, or there's a lack of
Hmm.
thinking through what is the human relationship underpinning, or the human inclinations, even if it's not a relationship based skill, if it's not coaching even,
Right.
what are the human inclinations that I need to take into account as I'm applying these tools, you know?
Yep.
And that's with capability building, that's always my push. Like the tool is an opportunity to facilitate better practice, but it's not going to guarantee it.
That's true. That is absolutely right on. We both know that. Okay, good. Well, that's a good start. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of whole self as leaders
Mhm.
and thinking about the relationship between whole self leaders, the individuals. What are some of your thinking these days on
Yeah, you know, gosh, so there's a
that?
lot of ways that we can approach this. I think something that's really important to me is this concept of burnout.
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot about to my colleagues, millennial colleagues, that range.
Hmm.
I think for a really long time, millennials have been kind of seen as just like either perpetually young, still like starting out in the workplace, not really quite sure of where their place is, or really like uh really set in their ways. I
Yeah.
think now we're seeing millennials are a huge age group, um, older now in the workplace, and so they
Yeah.
have more experience. They're more middle management inclined, and so there's more on their plate. And what I'm seeing is there's a lot of just energy flagging, a lot of I'm tired. I don't really
Hmm.
know what my purpose is. I'm not energized at work. I don't know why I'm here. And
Right.
so, this is like a drain on my on my energy. I think for me, when we think about capability building, the thing that really motivates me is how can we get people who are feeling that way to identify their purpose much more clearly?
Yeah.
How can we use capability building to show people these skills are expanding your toolkit, not because you're going to be more productive or more effective, like that's a great byproduct,
Right.
but because through your work, you can actually realize a little bit more about who you are. You can explore your purpose. How does what you do connect with what you want to do? And as an example, I've really been starting to try and learn a little bit more around like negotiation and stakeholder management.
Mm.
Because for me, something that's really important is being able to assert my boundaries and be able to stand up for myself. This is like a
Hmm.
personal skill set
Mm.
and really central to my purpose, which is like standing true and strong in who you are. And I think like, oh, not only can this help me in the workplace, but this can also help me as a person. And so I'm so much more motivated when I go to work and I go to these capability building sessions, because this is something that feels deeply connected to my sense of being.
So what's nice about what you just shared, and congratulations on that. I'm happy for you, and you seem to have a different sort of vibe in when you're describing it. You found that balance. You have, it sounds like a little bit more of a work life balance. Found that balance between the things that you're really energized by, and the things that are really motivating to you in terms of that purpose. That's fantastic. Which, Ruchi, I'll ask you a couple of questions then. As we start to think about work life balance and purpose and all of these things, what are some of the best practices we can share in terms of those elements?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing for everyone to understand and to start defining is what is your purpose? And
Yeah.
I say this to a lot of people, whether you're new in tenure at your organization, whether you've been there for a really long time. I think understanding what your personal purpose is and how that purpose aligns or diverges from your organizational purpose is key. It should be like a thought exercise you do
Hmm.
every year. You need to like stop, just like a performance review. Stop and think like, what is my purpose? What
Yeah.
moves me? What gets me energized? Why am I here on this earth? And how is what I'm doing aligning or diverging from that? And look, it's not going to be inspirational for everyone. In fact, it's not going to be inspirational for like 80% of the population, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's just really important for people to articulate it and identify the areas where there's a divergence.
And are you one of these people who say, okay, you have to write it down and you have to like really memorialize it, or else, it can get lost?
I think some people are. Personally, I don't like writing down things like
Hmm.
commitments or purpose. And you know me, Rob, you
Yeah.
can probably understand why that is. For me, I feel like it makes a little bit contrived, or like it
Yeah.
makes it feel like work. But there are
Yeah.
people who are like very organized who live and die by having to write it down,
Right.
and this makes it real.
It makes it real, and it gives you a grounding or something just to check back on,
Yeah.
so that a really good purpose statement probably is two, three, four sentences, and you may want to just remember exactly what it is that I had said my purpose is.
And I think even if you don't write it down, sharing with another person is another
Yes.
way to memorialize it. I
Yeah.
think like one thing that has been really interesting is having this conversation across community.
Hmm.
So being part of communities or practice is another thing that I would suggest in
Okay.
terms of finding your purpose and managing burnout. When you're with your people, and that can look like a lot of different things. It can be affinity groups by
Yeah.
your identity. It can be by your expertise. It can be by, say, like what you do. It can be even like people who are in your region. Just find
Right.
your people, the people who will support you, and make them kind of the people who hold you accountable for identifying your
I
purpose.
was just going to ask you. So there is a certain level of accountability in there in the network, in your friends, whether it's a colleague, a peer, a partner, just to make sure that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in thinking about this, there's some really good best practices, and I think foundationally, sleeping well and eating well
Yeah.
and exercising, those sorts of things should be foundational. I'm seeing and experiencing. I've never really seen it take this level of momentum. Things like creating environments of inclusion.
Oh yeah.
Um, as a leader, making and helping people feel like they really belong
Mhm.
is part of that recipe to get to that point where people do feel like the work has meaning to them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, you look at Gallup surveys, and that question, "Do you have a best friend at work?" is always the number one indicator for engagement levels at an
Hmm.
organization. And I think people find energy and they find purpose in their relationships with other people, especially at work. And so, as I think about the responsibility a leader has, or even the opportunity, let's frame it that way, an opportunity as well that you have to create a workforce that really evangelizes your product and service,
Yeah.
cares about what they're doing, and then cares about your client base. I think a couple of things are important. I'll do it in threes because we love threes. One is you need to make sure that you have like really strong, agreed upon norms of inclusion and psychological safety.
Yes.
What is acceptable and what is not? And I'm not talking about HR
Right.
violations or not. I'm,
Right.
I'm like thinking things like, here are the words we use. Here are the topics that we broach or don't broach.
Right.
Here's how we bring people of different identities to the table,
Right.
things like that. So one is, I think, just like structures and processes for inclusion.
Yep.
I think the second thing is really thinking about who is invited to the table, right? Like
Yeah.
making sure that your workforce is representative
Yeah.
of different because if you have a homogenous workforce, you're just not exposing the people who are in your business to different ways of thinking, to different people who might reflect like similarities
Right.
in their own, so I think having a diverse workforce is also really important.
Hmm.
And then I think the third thing is actually systemic. It's do you have processes and systems in place that value humanity and people,
Yeah.
right? So if we're thinking about the humanity of work, I'm thinking like, um, are you punitive in the way that you approach management? Do people feel like they're always looking over their shoulder, or do they feel like they're supported? Are you offering coaching proactively? Is performance evaluation looked at as a punishment rather than a career progression tool? Things like that are super, super important to think
Yeah.
about when you're creating that environment.
Agree so much. And I'll just share with you on a professional level and also on a personal level. I'll start with professional. I'm really seeing this play out in so many different ways. I just finished writing and executing a brand new simulation for a client who changed their leadership behaviors. And it's all about inclusion and it's all about diversity of thought, but it's also about being humble and being transparent. And for me, the last year has just opened my eyes up to some of the bad behaviors that I had adopted over time just because that's what my bosses did and that's what their bosses did. And you just did that. And now, what's also interesting is I think there's less room to hide. And what I
Mm,
mean by that, think about the physical work environment. Think about, the white guy in the corner office, who's it's intimidating. You here, sit here, and I'm going to give you some feedback. This new world is a great equalizer, and there's much less opportunity for intimidation. But there's also less room to hide behind all of that stuff. And it forces leaders really to get to that point in the road where they're going to be more humble, they're going to be more transparent, they're going to be more authentic and really create the environment, or it's not. There's much less in between, I think.
I also think that leaders don't always realize until they see the output how important and how much impact it has to see them kind of in the trenches, so to speak, with
Hmm.
people. So for me, I've been really pleasantly surprised by a couple of leadership actions in the past couple of weeks. I think, you know, people are recognizing how burnt out the general population is.
Yeah.
And I've seen some like very direct and purposeful reaching out from leaders to me and others saying like, thank you so much for your effort.
Yeah.
Here's the value you bring, and we want you to take care of yourself. So here are the things that were like looking for you to do, like take off,
Yeah.
take your PTO. How can we help you? And
Yeah.
that's a leader, which is
Yeah.
important. It's not just a manager; it's someone who's like very high up,
Yeah.
kind of doing the outreach, which is huge.
And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be a small thing. I know we're almost out of time. I'll give
Oh,
you
yep.
one last thought. So as the vaccine
Mm,
for the COVID vaccine has become much more readily available, I started noticing that request for sick time. I'm going to go get my vaccination. Going to get my vaccination. I mean, a dozen of them. And I said, wait a second, we have a civic obligation and I have a leadership obligation to my people. Say, you've been burning out, you've been working so hard, you don't need to take sick time to get
mhm,
that vaccine.
mhm.
That's on us. And if you don't feel well, don't take sick time. That's on us. So it's just the little things I think that everybody can start to think about in terms of their personal best practices.
That's incredible. I think that's like a very, very actually big thing that is
Yeah,
little, but it's very big. It has a huge impact in
it does.
how people feel supported.
Good. Ruchi, I am so glad that you are in a good place.
See,
I am also going to hope that you do get some rest, and
I'm taking
just
that PTO. I
take that
am.
PTO and just recharge,
Yeah,
because the fun is just starting.
absolutely. Well, Rob, this was great as usual. And anyone who has any thoughts on future topics, as always, please
Leave
leave
us
them
some comments right down
below.
there. Yep.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll see you
Rob.
soon.
See you soon.